Did you know that according to the National Council for Behavioral Health, approximately 70% of American adults will experience at least one traumatic event in their lifetime? Now, what if I told you that those effects of traumatic experiences can start a cycle that negatively impacts future generations? I'm sure some of you might be wondering how one person's trauma can affect generations that aren't even born yet. Well, after years of weekly therapy sessions, I realized that the traumatic events experienced by generations before me had indeed been affecting my life. I began making connections between my mother and father's past traumas and how my siblings and I were raised. This is when my therapist started teaching me about intergenerational trauma. Today, I would like to inform you about the symptoms of intergenerational trauma, how it can affect a family system, and options for treatment. First, let's start with the symptoms. Intergenerational trauma has drastic impacts, but often the symptoms can be hard to detect. Dr. Dakota King White says that the symptoms of this trauma can be mistaken for other disorders. Things like denial, depersonalization, isolation, memory loss, nightmares, substance abuse, and unresolved grief are all symptoms of many other health disorders. Of course, every person and experience is different, so the symptoms will vary from person to person. However, the symptoms will always be physical, emotional, and behavioral. Now that we've covered some of the symptoms, let's move on to how this can disrupt the family system. Intergenerational trauma can affect the way parents raise their children. According to Duke University, a parent or grandparent who never learned from or explored their own trauma may find it very difficult to provide emotional support to their children or other family members. This is important because the way a family member copes with trauma can determine how younger generations may cope with their own trauma. For example, this is Mary, her daughter Sue, and her granddaughter Ashley. Mary had a traumatic experience when she was young that caused her to have PTSD. Because of this, she developed unhealthy coping mechanisms and became emotionally unavailable. Fast forward, Mary has a daughter named Sue, and throughout Sue's life, she has picked up on Mary's unhealthy styles. Additionally, since Mary never taught her how to provide emotional support, she doesn't know how to give it to other people. Now Sue has a daughter, Ashley, and she's now passing on all of these same unhealthy coping styles and habits to her. And this will continue over and over again throughout different generations until eventually one person gets help and breaks the cycle. With that being said, let's go over the treatment options. There are two important steps when treating an intergenerational trauma cycle. The first step is becoming aware of the cycle. This is naturally the first step because no one can fight a problem that they are unaware of. The second step is therapy. Therapy has been known to help with many different mental disorders, and intergenerational trauma is no different. Therapy can also help people identify unhealthy patterns and behaviors that may contribute to the trauma cycle. In conclusion, we have seen that it can play a huge mechanisms and spreads throughout generations. Thankfully, there are ways to stop this cycle and heal from the trauma. In my case, both increased awareness and therapy have been extremely helpful. I might not ever fully heal from the intergenerational trauma that runs within my family. However, I'm glad that I now understand it and have options to deal with it. Thank you.